So recession's coming, we know that. What is the government going to do to make this as painless as possible?
Well, great to be with you, Tom. The account figures are looking like we're going to see a reduction in excess of 7%. They'll be the worst results since the 1930 Great Depression, and indeed the first recession we've seen as a nation for over 3 decades. You have to be over 50 to remember being an adult in that recession for the Keating government. I guess that's why our government's been so on the front foot with pumping up the economy in excess of $314 billion to keep people connected to their workplace, to keep businesses supported with, even through the JobKeeper program alone, 900,000 businesses employing 3.5 million Australians being supported by the initiatives that we are putting on the table as a federal government. I think one of the things that won't assist us in a recovery is to continue the hard border lockdowns and not developing a more nuanced and flexible way to deal with ongoing outbreaks of COVID-19 as we learn to live with this. And being a Nationals Party senator and living out in one of those border communities, the impact on those local businesses and allowing regional Australia to really be part of and lead a recovery post-COVID-19 will require a more sophisticated way to deal with living with this virus.
And I'll get to that in a moment, some of the concerns around movement and restrictions. But, I mean, the government's spoken a lot about the support given, and you mentioned it there, to help everyone get through the worst of the crisis as it's unfolding. What about getting out of it? I mean, is it fair to say the budget in October, it's going to need a lot more imagination than talking about, you know, delaying super increases? What is the plan to really, you know, some different ideas to get things going?
Yeah, well, Tom, I think you really raise a great question. I mean, when you look at the post-World War II recovery plans that were constructed at that time, took a lot of imagination and creativity. I know the Treasurer and the government is always looking at ways to increase investment and to drive job growth and support businesses. I don't think that's just going to be income tax cuts alone. What I'd like to see as National Party Senate leader is the region's involvement in leading that recovery, and that means significant initiatives around advanced manufacturing, food processing, defence processing, minerals processing out in the regions, having a skills and employment package that really looks at 21st century skill development. What is our economy going to look like in 10, 20 years, and how do we actually support Australians to move forward there? And to really look at where we live and work. I think one of the outcomes of the COVID-19 restrictions that we've been living through is we've had to be really adaptive. That's a huge opportunity for those out in the regions. So with the right infrastructure, targeted investment, including communications, we would love to see many more Australians living and working and raising a family, building businesses out in our regional communities. And that's a real opportunity that I'd like to see realised in October's budget.
Is the internet connection and speed and reliability holding things up to a degree on how much some of the regions and country areas can compete with cities?
Well, I think we've, as a government, over since 2013, have made a significant difference in that area. We flipped the NBN on its head, so it rolled out into regional communities, and those communities without any broadband first. We made significant changes to our satellite program, so people could have extended downloads for those really remote areas, and our iconic mobile black spot program, a National Party initiative in coalition that has seen, you know, hundreds and hundreds of mobile phone towers out delivering connectivity to regions who've never had it. But farmers are innovative, regional Australians are really innovative, so when they've had that connectivity, they've done amazing things with it in terms of building global businesses and on-farm productivity measures. So we're getting there, but more can be done.
You spoke there about the importance of people being able to have, you know, movement, importance for the economy. What have you made of Tony Abbott's comments and warning against these tough restrictions in his speech overnight?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to hear snippets of that on my walk in this morning. Look, I've been very vocal about this over the last 8 weeks since we've been living with severe border restrictions between New South Wales and Victoria, and all of your viewers will have heard the horrific human toll that these border closures have seen. It's about people being able to access healthcare, schools, the mental health of our young people who can't get home from boarding school, and the tragedy of people losing businesses and unable to get to work and becoming unemployed, not because there's any community transmission of COVID-19, not because there's any COVID-19 at all, but because state premiers have decided to play a very politically popular game, be city-centric, rather than using the data, using the research, using medical evidence on how to deal with COVID-19.
Right, but, I mean,
we're wanting people to move.
He goes into what he's talking about, more difficult conversations. When you look at the lockdown in Melbourne, he wants a health economist look at things rather than the utmost caution, if you like, and also saying you need to have uncomfortable conversations about death rates as well. Do you agree with that push?
Well, Tom, I tell you, as a Victorian that has had to live with the absolute tragedy of a failure of policy implementation by our state Labor Premier and his ministers, I mean, the tragedy we're seeing unfold in Melbourne and more broadly in those larger regional centres of Victoria are a direct result of failure of policy implementation, not using a health economist to set those policy settings. So if Daniel Andrews and his government have actually had a decent quarantine system we could trust and contact tracing along agreed national KPIs, then we would not be here and having this conversation.
But is that about the health economist sort of point of view? I mean, Tony Abbott's talking more about let's assess impacts on all walks of life before we have this level 4 lockdown. What would that mean?
Well, I would rather
lockdown right now. Should it end?
Tom, I would. Well, my response to your question is I would rather our state premiers did their job, actually ran a decent quarantine system we could have confidence in.
Right, but that ship sailed. It's about where we go from here.
Well, it hasn't sailed. As you can see, the numbers are coming back down in Victoria.
Failed and got out into the. No, but what I mean is the quarantine part's failed.
The numbers are coming down. And so what I'm looking forward to in Victoria is that this second wave will be brought under control, that the state government will have processes in place to ensure this doesn't happen again. And that's why I've been calling for a nationally consistent approach to quarantine in this country from all state governments and a nationally consistent approach to movement of different workforces so that we can keep the economy open. I think the PM's made the right call on going for a nationally consistent approach to defining a hotspot, because if we had have shut down those 12 local government areas in Melbourne when they were recognised as a hotspot back in June, we wouldn't be here, and nor would our economy, which is having not just economic impacts, and I think this is Tony's broader point, but it's having significant social and health impacts on the broader population, how we've dealt with the COVID.
Are you comfortable with the Andrews government and their approach at the moment to reopening, though? I mean, should there be a prospect that the harsh stage 4 lockdown goes beyond September 13 if they take an ultra-cautious approach, or should that be the end of things?
Well, Tom, I'm the National Party Senate leader. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that those of us that live out in regional Victoria who have had no COVID cases and no community transmission are in stage 3 lockdown and are seeing businesses be lost, young people developing mental health problems, unable to finish their education, families separated. So I think Daniel Andrews needs to get a lot more nuanced and sophisticated about how he's dealing with the coronavirus to get... Right now, Tom, you can leave Melbourne. You can drive out into the regions. We've had people heading up into COVID-free communities to purchase puppies, to, look at properties to buy. No, you're not. And our expectation of our Premier and his minister, they're not supposed to, but I can't get in a kayak across the Murray River without a permit at the moment, despite these two communities having no corona transmissions. But people are being allowed out of Melbourne, and that is because he is refusing to put them through
well,
the same issues that our regional communities are.